In this video, I'm going to explain everything that you need to know about holding companies, or parent companies as some people refer to them. I'll explain how the group company structure works and when you should consider registering a holding company. To start, let's look at the definition of a holding company. The Oxford language defines a holding company as a company created to buy and own shares of other companies which it then controls. Therefore, holding companies do not produce any goods or services. They simply hold assets. These assets are usually shares of other companies, but they could also be properties, trademarks, or patents. The key difference is that holding companies just hold assets, while operating companies run the day-to-day operations of the business. Registering a holding company is no different from registering any other regular company. In South Africa, most holding companies are therefore standard Pty Ltds. The only difference is the purpose for which the Pty is registered, which is to hold assets rather than to trade, and the fact that the holding company owns the shares of the trading company. Trusts and CCs can therefore also be holding companies, but it is important to remember that trusts are taxed at a higher rate than companies, and CCs are not as flexible in terms of shareholding as Ptys. This is why Ptys remain the preferred type of holding company in South Africa. So why do people want to register holding companies? There are two main reasons. The first, to reduce risk by separating the assets away from the operating business into separate legal entities. A typical example would be if a restaurant owner owns the premises in which his restaurant operates. In this example, it would be advisable for the owner to register 3 companies. Company A, the holding company, will own the shares in the other 2 companies. Company B will own the building and charge rent to Company C, which will own and operate the restaurant. This keeps the liabilities of the different companies separate, so that if the restaurant fails, the assets in Company B are not impacted due to the limited liability protection. The second reason why people own holding companies is to allow one company ownership and control over a number of different businesses. The best global example is the world's #1 investor, Warren Buffett, whose company Berkshire Hathaway controls and owns hundreds of different companies. This control allows him to appoint directors through voting rights linked to his shares in the respective companies or subsidiaries. Now, we often get enthusiastic entrepreneurs wanting to set up complex group company structures based on their grand ideas even before the intended businesses have started. I understand their intentions, as they would like to get organized by putting the group company structure in place even before the respective businesses have got off the ground. My advice is that you do not have to set up the group company structure from the outset, as you can always add new operating companies as and when they get off the ground. In fact, you could even register the holding company years after the operating companies are up and running, and then transfer your shares from the operating company to the holding company. To register and maintain a group of companies is also expensive, so only register the operating and holding companies one at a time and when it makes financial sense to do so. From an accounting perspective, a group company structure can be more complex than initially anticipated, as companies can create loan accounts between each other by raising finance and transferring the funds between the companies. Now, this attracts interest and therefore has tax implications. A group company structure can also be complex from an ownership perspective, as the operating companies can have any combination of shareholders, not just the holding company. For example, in the construction industry, a new operating company is often created as a joint venture between different businesses for a specific project, usually a large engineering project, and the shareholding of the joint venture is held by the respective holding companies. This was a slightly more complex video, but I hope it was informative. So as always, remember, we are here to help.